So today we'll be talking about effective communication for startup teams. And I'm Oluwatosin Araoye. So you can address me as Tosin. While for the sake of this webinar, you can, when you're dropping your message or you're asking your questions. All right. So I'm excited to actually take you through this critical topic. I know communication is a topic that says a lot. We do it in our formal settings, informal settings, our daily lifestyle. Right now, what we are doing is communicating, passing an information across or passing a message across to you. So communication is unavoidable. Communication is what we do on a daily basis, when you wake up in the morning, saying good morning to someone next to you is you communicating with the person. So all of that, we know that, you cannot do without communication. All right. For the sake of this webinar, we are going to be discussing effective communication for startup teams, and we'll be focusing on remote teams. So for today's agenda, we'll be talking about what effective communication means. Communication in a startup environment, simply because we'll be focusing on our startup environment, and we'll also be talking about strategies for remote teams, because we are focusing on remote teams. We'll be talking about how to enhance cross-functional collaboration within a team. And we'll also, emphasize on some of the tools that can actually help you to improve communication within your team. And then we move ahead to conflict resolution, because within a team, there must be conflict. And how do you resolve this conflict is very important. So we'll be talking about conflict resolution. And then we conclude, and you can have the floor to ask your questions, contribute to today's topic. All right, so let's dive into what we have today. Let's talk about the stew on this. So what do we understand by effective communication? I believe we all know what communication means, and I explained, in simple terms earlier when I was discussing that we communicate daily. You saying good morning to someone is you communicating. It's just you, passing information to someone, and for a communication to occur, there must be someone that is sending the message, and there must be someone that is also receiving the message. So that means we have a sender and a receiver for a communication to occur. Now, what do we understand by effective communication? All right. When we say a communication is effective, that is from every resource that I've been able to gather, things I've read and Google books and all of that we've read. I know some of us already know what effective communication means. However, would also be stating in few sentence or in just a sentence what effective communication actually means. So for the sake of this webinar, effective communication is actually the ability for you to clearly convey a message, and it is received and understood with clarity and purpose. There are two words I would like us to, take note of. And those two words are highlighted here, which, they're highlighted in bold: clarity and purpose. For you to say communication is actually effective, that means that communication is clear, and it has a purpose. That the person that is receiving that information understands that message, or understands the message you're trying to convey. So there should be clarity and there should be purpose when it comes to communication. All right. And when we're talking about effective communication, there are key elements that I would like us to take note of. And I would want us to see these key elements as, let's call it the 3 C's. And these 3 C's, as we have here on this slide, the first one we'll be talking about is clarity, and the second one is conciseness, and the third one, which is the last one, is consistency. First one I'll take again: clarity. Second one, conciseness, and the third one is consistency. when we talk about clarity, clarity when it comes to you communicating, you need to be clear, you need to be delivering your message in a way that is easy for everyone to understand. You want whatever you're communicating or whatever message you are trying to convey to be well understood by the receiver. So you need to be as clear as possible. Your message should be as clear as possible. So when we talk about conciseness is you actually, going straight to the point, avoiding unnecessary, details or jargon, just hitting the nail on the head. What are you trying to say? Just go straight to the point. You want to be concise when you're communicating. You don't want to beat about the bush and someone is reading your message and still trying to think about, oh, what's this person trying to say? Is this person trying to say this? Or the person is thinking twice to understand what the message is about. And your message needs to, be straight to the point. You need to be concise. Just hit the nail on the head. Avoid anything unnecessary when you're communicating. And the last one is consistency. When you're communicating, you need to ensure that you are in alignment, when it comes to all communication channels or within your team. So ensuring alignment across the different channels and different teams, that's where consistency comes in. You want to be consistent. You want to make sure when you're communicating, via a text or email or phone call, you're communicating the same thing, or you're communicating in the same way. There should be consistency when you're communicating. All right. So let's move to the next one. And we said, okay, we've talked about the key elements. Now we're going to be moving to our next slide, which talks about, unique challenges of communication in startups. I would want us to take note of something that's for every team, there are challenges that are unique to your team. Now, for the sake of this webinar, would be focusing on the startup team, okay? And the startup team, it can actually be a remote or a physical work environment, actually. So this communication challenge is basically unique to startup environment, and I would want us to pay attention while discussing this. And once we at the end of the presentation, you can ask questions. Feel free, just ask your question, and if you understand everything, I would also like to see your reaction. So let's discuss the unique challenges of communication in startups. The first one I would like to emphasize on is fast pace. We knowing fully well that in a startup environment is fast paced. There are so many things going on at a point. There's so many things going on at a time. You have to be on your toes. Keep working. You have to do things as fast as you can. The second one is diverse roles. You putting into consideration that you have a small team and you have people with big responsibilities. That's the way diverse team works. When it comes to a challenge in a startup team. And the last one is limited resources. When it comes to limited resources, you have resource constraints. Sometimes you may actually lack the large team that you need to complete a project or complete a particular task, and you have limited capacity at a time, but you have to make do with what you have, because it's a startup team. You don't want to spend your money recruiting so many resources or so many capacity for a project, and at the end of the day, maybe the project ends. What do you do? So you need to make do with the little resources that you have. That happens. That's one of the challenges with that is unique to startup teams. And when I was talking about the fast pace being a challenge when it comes to a startup team, I would like to emphasize on the fact that because there is high speed, so many things are moving fast. You have teams that are working tirelessly on projects and everything. Things are moving so fast. It is very easy for people to bypass formal processes. processes that you are supposed to follow for you to, get a certain thing done, or or communicate a certain thing. And you see people, bypassing this process just because they quickly want to do it. It is fast paced. Oh, I quickly need to get this done. I quickly need to get that done. And they just bypass the process. Either someone is actually supposed to, review a particular documents, and you just say, oh, I think I've reviewed it enough, and maybe my manager has reviewed it, and you just pass it on. And there might be something that the other person that is meant to, actually review it when it comes to the process that you're supposed to follow. In such situation, you bypass such process, and maybe something happens, and you don't get a deal that you're supposed to get, and it comes back. You want to make sure that you are avoiding little things like that. Yes, we know that it's fast paced. Yes, we know that we are working at high speed. But however, we want to make sure we are following the process we are supposed to follow. But in a startup team, that's one of the problem. That's one of the challenge that they have. When we talk about diverse roles as well, we are talking about, people that are wearing multiple hats. You have somebody that is managing 3 teams at a time. You have one person managing the partnership team. You have the same person managing the sales team, the marketing team. The person is working on diverse roles. The person has diverse roles that they have to fill. They have a big responsibility. The person wears multiple hats at a time. In such situation, there can be something we call information overload, which means that the person can have too many information in their head at a time. And when they're trying to communicate with one team, they might forget a few things because they're trying to remember what they would discuss when talking to the other team. I'll use this as an example. Oh, you're managing the partnership team, you're managing the sales team, and you're also managing the marketing team. Now you're managing these 3 teams, and you have a meeting with the partnership team. While you are discussing with the partnership team, communicating your next line of action, you're discussing your current task, what you should do next, and everything. You might miss out on some information because while you're thinking about that, while you're passing information across to the team, something would come to your head that is relating to marketing. And while you're thinking about that thing, and you're saying, oh, I should remember this when I'm speaking with the marketing team, that would actually, can actually distort your chain of thoughts while discussing with the partnership team. I don't know if you get or understand what I said. If you actually do understand, I would like to see your reaction. And if you don't, you can also, react. So I would know that you're following and you understand perfectly. All right. Okay, so I can see that you understand. So you have somebody working on having to manage different tasks, wearing multiple ads, which may lead to information overload. And we've talked about limited resources, you having a resource constraint, which is one of the things is that startups may actually lack, the tools or infrastructures that is straight that to streamline their communication. So limited resources, you have limited people, working on maybe a lot of projects, and you don't want to make the mistake of hiring so many resources or capacity at that time. So these are some of the challenges that are unique to, startup teams. um this might not be all of the challenge. However, depending on your team, you will have some peculiar challenges that are unique to your team as well. But for the sake of what we are discussing today, that's why we're talking about these 3 in particular. So, how can we address these challenges? Now, we've been able to identify 3 unique challenges. Then, how can we address these challenges? It's very important that one of the things I usually say is that you being able to identify the problem or the challenge, that's where the solution starts. You already know the problem. So you identifying the problem, you already have solution number 1. It's just for you to move to the next step, then you take other steps to resolve the problem or to resolve the challenge. So how can we address these challenges we've identified earlier? So how we can actually do this is one, create a communication framework. Creating this communication framework is also would also be peculiar to your team. However, when you create a communication framework, you have to create a communication framework that is unique to your team, unique to the challenges that you have as a team. And this may actually include, daily stand up. You um, adding daily stand ups to your communication framework. When it comes to daily stand ups, you want to make sure that your daily stand up is just for 10 to 15 minutes, not too long. Don't make your daily stand up to 1 hour, 2 hours. Then it gets tiring because you do it every day. Nobody will look forward to such, such stand up meetings. All right. You want to make sure that, while having your daily stand-ups, if it's a physical environment, you want to make sure, okay, you just have a cup of coffee while having your stand-ups, or if it's a remote environment, just a 10 to 15 minutes daily stand-up is fine. That works for the team because you'd carry that out every day. You don't want to bore the team. All right. Another thing you can also include in your communication framework is a weekly practice session. For my own team, we call it practice session. So you can call it what you like within your team. However, it's just you still getting the same results. It could be a knowledge sharing session. All right, it's going to be weekly. You can set up a 30 minutes weekly meeting within your team. During these sessions, you get to talk about a lot of things. You get to share knowledge. People get to actually, have a good sync on what they are working on. It is the weekly practice session is actually more detailed than that of the daily stand-up. So when it comes to your weekly practice session is more detailed, and this is where you actually get to give updates on what you're working on, and you also share your blockers on, wherever you have blockers on your current task. You share it. And during this practice session, you can actually have somebody within the team that would say, oh, what are you experiencing, Toyosi, are you experiencing this kind of difficulty? I think I've experienced such before. This was how I resolved it. That's the people sharing their knowledge with you. And if it's something you are not still getting, it's something you can just quickly message Toyosi. Oh, Toyosi, I remember you mentioned during our practice session that you were able to resolve this problem this way. Can you please put me through? Can we jump on the call to resolve this? Things like that. Do you understand? So that's one of the ways that can help you improve your communication within your team. As a startup team, you want to make sure that everybody is sharing their knowledge. You guys are, updated when it comes to what you're all working on. So weekly practice session is also one of the ways that can help you address um, these challenges. Another one is you using the right tools for communication. There are so many tools that can be used for communication. You know, we have Slack. You can use Slack for real-time communication. You have Teams. You have different tools that you can use for communication. Just look for what works best for you. Excuse me, please. Look for what works best for you. And sorry, I have cold, so because I'm speaking, have to um I'd have to reduce the tempo a bit. So look for what works best for you as a team. You can use any tool of your choice. Make research on what you know that would work for your team. You can use Slack, like I mentioned, use Teams as well. So these are some of the tools that can help you as a team. All right. So next would be talking about uh let's go to the next slide, please. All right. So Next, we'll be talking about the strategies for remote teams. Now, we've spoken about a few challenges, um, peculiar to startup teams. Now, let's talk about strategies for remote teams. And when we're talking about these strategies, we'll start with the challenges that that a remote team, in a remote setting, the kind of challenges that they can be faced with. And these challenges, I think, for remote settings, it is, peculiar to remote setting, not physical work environment, and one of which is loss of face-to-face interaction. Unlike where you go to your physical office, you guys interact, you see your colleagues, get to discuss, get to gist sometimes, and walk into each other's office, and sometimes you just grab a drink after work and all of that. That might not be the same, or that wouldn't be the same for a remote team. So one of the challenge that they have is loss of face-to-face interaction. The second one is a difficulty in maintaining trust and engagement. you know when you give a task to somebody, you're like, oh, will this person complete it in how many minutes? Unlike a physical work environment where you can just walk into the person's office and tell the person, I'm coming back um in 10 minutes, in 20 minutes, in 30 minutes, and you would see that person in 30 minutes. For a remote work setting, if you tell this person, oh, I need it in 30 minutes, and the person doesn't respond to you within 30 minutes, what does that do to you? you know the next time you might not trust the person's time to resolve a problem. So you this difficulty in maintaining trust and engagement is actually a challenge when it comes to a remote team, a startup remote team. And the last one we'll be talking about is also cultural and time zone differences. That's also part of the challenge that the remote team has, because when you have people working from different country, and you have people that you have like 6 hours time zone difference. You have people that you're working with, and the time zone difference is like about 5 hours, like that. Maybe at the time you are meant to be sleeping, that's when the person is up and working and all of that. So that can be a challenge for a remote team setting, or like physical work setting, where everybody comes in, they do their thing, and by the time it is 5:30, you know work closes and they all go home. All right. So it's not the same for a remote team settings. You have people that are working um, with you, and they have different cultural and time zone difference. So that can be a challenge. However, there are best practices that we have that can help you to overcome these challenges. You know, and the first one would be to set communication guidelines. You want to set communication guidelines. You want to, when it comes to your response time, clarify on the response time. You want to make sure that, okay, when you receive a message on Slack, you know depends on the priority of that message. You should respond within this particular time frame. In 30 minutes, you should have responded. In 1 hour, you should have responded. Response time is 10 minutes. You want to set that, in your communication guideline. You want to put that in there. You want to, in your communication guideline, you would also be adding the preferred tools for your team, the preferred kind of meeting schedule you want to have within the team. So all of these are very important. So you should include them in your communication guidelines. So set a communication guideline. So it would help everybody it will help the team, I would say. It will help the team, to work better, to communicate better, irrespective of the time zone or the cultural difference that they have. When they follow this communication guideline, it will help them to work better, to communicate better, to engage better. Another way to overcome this challenge is to leverage on the right tools. I mentioned Slack earlier for because Slack is an instant messaging tool. You want to communicate in real time. You want to make sure that, oh, I am thinking about something and I need to drop a message for Toyosi. You just go to Slack, open your Slack, send a message to Toyosi, and the message will be delivered to Toyosi in real time. When Toyosi comes online, or if she's online at that time, she'll get the message. You know, these are some of the tools you can use for instant message. Tools that you can also use for interaction. You want to see yourself face to face. You can use Google Meets. These are for video interaction. All right. So you want to use Google Meet for video interactions. There are other tools that you can actually use. You can use Zoom as well for video interactions as well. You want to see each other, while you're talking. You want to make sure you can see, like right now you are seeing me. You can see my body language. You can read my body language. You can see my reaction, the way I'm moving, the way I'm speaking. That would also give you a better interpretation, or a better understanding of what I'm talking about. As long as you can see me, you can tell from my body language that this is what I'm trying to say, or this is how interested I am in a particular thing. So these things are important. Video interaction, use your Google Meet, use Zoom. For documentation, use Google Workspace. You can use Google Workspace. You have your Google Docs, you have your Google sheet there, uh, Google Slides as well. You can use that as well for your PowerPoint, for presentations and all of that. These are tools that you can leverage on. You know, these are some of the things that will help you to overcome some of these challenges that you have as a startup team or as a remote team. All right, and the last one would be to build personal connections. Now, this is very important. Unlike a physical work environment where you see each other every day, you have some sort of connection, some sort of personal connections. Some people will become your workplace buddy, that your go-to people, your go-to person, that this is the person I go to whenever I need something. In fact, you can actually go home together, attend parties together, because you see each other every day. You start creating or building some personal connection from there. But for a remote work setting, you can't build such connection, I would say. However, for you to be able to build a connection that is just like that, you need to add a few things to help your team, to lighten the mood, to help them to build this personal connection. One of the ways you can do that is to have your virtual team bonding. You guys can have a team bonding session. What do you do during these team bonding sessions? Have like a TGIF. You want to have it every Friday, once in a month. During this time, you want everybody to loosen up, to just have fun, play music, dance. You can even tell people to actually bring their snack and all of that, during this team bonding. You also want to have game time. You can actually do that during your TGIF. Set up a game competition. You can use money as an incentive, for people to participate and be interested, because I'll tell you, people like money. That's one of the things that can actually encourage people to, join, and they'll get to create and build personal connections. You get to see people from the cloud engineering team, throwing jabs at those in the delivery team and all of that. The kind of connection they would have during that period is going to be a bit different from the work connection that is just strictly formal and all of that. You want to all of this, to help you build your personal connections, and it's very good for you to create this for your team. All right, next we'll be talking about how we can address the cultural and time zone difference. you know One of the things I would say is that you should encourage asynchronous communication when possible. And this is for you to be mindful of the cultural nuances when you're communicating with people. You want to make sure that you are mindful of this person's culture. You want to make sure that you are aware that, oh, I am not, this person is not from my background, is not from my is not, we are not from, we do not we are not from the same ethnic group, we are not from we don't have the same cultural background, we don't have, in fact, we don't speak the same cultural language, I would say. So you want to be mindful of that. You want to make sure, I would say, for instance, within our team we have, our staff members that are in Kenya, Zimbabwe, and all of that. When you're communicating, you want to make sure that you are involving everybody. You want to be mindful of the fact that, oh, when you're throwing some subtle jabs and you're making, funny statements, you want to be mindful that they understand. You're not just speaking to those in your own country, which I am from Nigeria. So there's a kind of subtle jab I would throw, and a Nigerian would easily understand. However, a Ghanaian might not understand such. I want to be mindful of throwing such jab, or making some kind of comment and all of that. I want to be mindful of that. So you addressing this cultural and time zone difference is you being mindful of the cultural nuances. You also want to make sure that you are clear and concise when you're communicating. In your communication, make sure you are clear, make sure your communication is concise. You want to be clear as possible. We discussed this when we're talking about the key elements for effective communication: clarity, conciseness, consistency. All of this, you want to make sure that you use them because they're key elements in communication. Okay, so let's talk about how we can enhance cross-functional collaboration. When it comes to a remote work setting, you cannot, when I say you cannot even avoid cross-functional collaboration, because everybody would have to work together, and you would have people from different departments, different domain working together, to achieve a common goal. And the one of the importance of cross-functional collaboration in a startup team is that um, it helps innovation. All right, it helps people to innovate quickly, because you cannot just overemphasize the importance of cross-functional collaboration in a remote team. Okay, so you want to take note of the fact that it would help to improve your innovation within your team. Cross-functional collaboration, you have people from different team working together, people bringing their idea. You have somebody in uh, the marketing team working with someone in the cloud team. They bring ideas together and see how they can make things work, how they can work faster, and how they collaborate when they're working. All right, you want to make sure that you avoid people working in silos, people working in isolation, because when you have people working in isolation, it can actually derail progress. So you want to make sure that you avoid all of this at all costs. So how do we ensure, how do we break these silos, how do we ensure that we break these silos, we ensure that people are not working in isolation? One of the things is to align on shared goals. Make sure you have a common goal, make sure everybody is aligned on this goal, so they'll be able to work together to achieve this goal. And you don't have somebody working on something different and you have another person working on something different, and at the end of the day, when everybody comes together and you're like, why didn't you carry me along, why didn't you do this, why didn't you do that? So we want to avoid all of that. So for you to break silos, you need to align on shared goals, ensure that everybody understands the broader mission, what we are trying to achieve, what's the mission, you know, everybody is aligned on that. The second one is for you to encourage transparency. And when you're encouraging transparency, you want to make sure that you share updates and decisions openly. So you share updates and decisions openly just to keep everybody informed. You know, you want everybody to be informed on what they're working on. You don't want people thinking, oh, maybe you're favoring this person, you're not favoring this person. When you're giving updates, you give everybody updates. You give when you're making decisions, you also carry everyone along. And the last one is, to clearly define responsibilities. All right, this is for you to this talks about you refine roles. Okay, so you want to clearly define responsibilities. So you want to avoid duplications when it comes to responsibility. This person is doing this, and this person is also doing the same thing. You want to have people working on different things so they can come together to achieve a common goal, and to achieve the same you know the same mission. You want everybody to be clear on their responsibility. Oh, this is your own responsibility, this is your own responsibility, this is how you can work together to achieve this particular goal. So you don't want to have duplicates, you don't want to cause confusion within the team. Okay, so you don't want to cause confusion within the team. So you also want people to improve collaboration. So by doing that, you want them to um you want to improve collaboration by fostering knowledge sharing amongst the team rather. So I mentioned something when I was talking about I think communication framework, you creating communication framework. I mentioned practice sessions, I mentioned knowledge sharing session, that would help you to improve collaboration. So for you to, foster that knowledge sharing amongst the team to improve your collaboration, you need to break silos. You need to avoid people working in isolation so they don't derail on progress, or they don't slow down the progress of the team. All right, um so next we'll be talking about tools, right? Tools that we can leverage on, that can help us to improve on that can help us to improve communication. So for real-time collaboration, I've mentioned some tools earlier. I mentioned Slack, just type a message, drop it for the person on Slack. Sometimes you can even call the person, have the person huddle with the person immediately. That's also what you can do with Slack. You can also do such with Microsoft Teams. You just drop a message for whoever you're speaking with, your colleague, and they get the message in real time. And you also see when the person is online. You will know that, oh, this person is online right now, this person is not online. um for Teams as well, you can also do the same. You can call the person, you can drop a message for the person. For virtual meetings, you can use Zoom. I mentioned that earlier. You can use Google Meet. You just jump on a call with the person, turn on your video, see each other, have a discussion, quickly discuss whatever you want to discuss. If it's something you need to explain and all of that, just for you to be in sync and be on the same page. For documentations, you can use Notion, you can use Google Workspace. Those are some of the tools that you can also leverage on when it comes to communication. So these tools would help you to improve your communication. All right, so we move to conflict resolution. When it comes to conflict resolution, I would say that um, conflict is one of the things that we cannot avoid within a team. When it comes to conflict, it's something we cannot avoid within a team. So conflicts arises, from time to time. Aside from you, working with a team, in our daily life, conflict is unavoidable. However, what is important is how we manage this conflict. How do we ensure we manage this conflict so as to avoid this conflict from escalating? So we need to curtail it from this conflict escalating. So within a team, how do we ensure this conflict doesn't escalate? How do we ensure we resolve this conflict and we resolve it amicably? All right. So when conflict arises within a team, one of the ways we can approach this conflict is number one, with empathy. When it comes to team conflicts, you have to, approach it with empathy. Try to understand the feelings of those that are involved in this conflict. Try not to judge. By you not judging, you want to make sure that you're focusing on the issue and not the person, not the people involved in the conflict. Make sure you're focusing on the issue. Okay, what exactly is the problem? What exactly is the issue? You want to resolve that issue, not you saying, oh, I know Toyosi, this is how Toyosi behaves. And just by hearing from the other person, because this is how Toyosi is, you just judge. No, you don't resolve conflicts in such manner. That conflict would escalate and it would distort your flow of communication within the team. You would see that your communication will no longer be effective within the team if you do such. So what you can do is to make sure you're focusing on the issue. Forget for a minute that this is how Toyosi might actually be right in that instance or in that situation. Toyosi might actually be the one on or be the right person. you know just focus on the issue. What exactly is the problem? Okay, how did this happen? I will need you to explain what's your own. I'll need you to also explain, and you also resolving conflict depends on the kind of conflict you are also resolving. So you want to make sure that you are focused on the issue and not the people or the person involved in that conflict, so as to ensure that you resolve that conflict amicably. Okay, so for us to conclude, because of our time, I would like to just conclude here. Um, when it comes to communication, the best practices for communicating effectively in a startup team is first understanding the startup communication landscape. You need to understand how communication works within a startup. So that's one of the things that can help you to effectively communicate in a startup environment. The second one is building a strong communication culture. You want to build a strong communication culture within your team. All right. And how you can do that is to also leverage on some of the ideas that we've talked about from the beginning, our daily stand-ups, the weekly practice sessions and all of that. You want to, build a good communication guideline that is unique for your team, peculiar to your team. You want to be able to identify the problems that you have within your team or the challenges you have and be able to resolve them, knowing that these are the challenges that are unique to my team. So next step, I would want us to take idea from today's sessions and resolve these challenges when it comes to um you setting up your virtual team bonding and all of that. All of these ideas we've mentioned, I would want us to take one of this idea from today's session and implement it this week. You know, let's pick one of these ideas. Let's see how we can implement it within our team. I would want us to interact on our social medias. Just you can interact under the post, the post or the advert for this webinar and say, oh, I actually leveraged on this particular idea that was discussed during the webinar and it worked for my team. We want to know your experience. We want to hear from you. We want to make sure that, okay, these are the things that, you implemented within your team and it worked for you. So thank you very much for joining this webinar. I'll be taking questions now from you. If you have any question or you would also like to contribute, you can drop your question and also drop your contribution in the comment section. All right, thank you very much, everyone. I hope you've been able to take one or two things, or you've been able to learn one or two things from everything that has been said today. Um, you know, discussing the topic effective communication for a startup environment. All right, so I'd like to hand over to Toyosi to take it from here. Thank you everyone for joining. Toyosi,
Wow.
over to
Thank
you.
you so much, Oluwatosin. Thank you for that amazing presentation. Now it's the session for question and answers. Okay, so I have two questions for you, Oluwatosin. Quickly, you just help us, answer it as brief as you can. So one is, how can remote team overcome the challenge of proper communication among teams?
Okay, how can remote team overcome um, communication challenge? One of the things I would like to say is when I was discussing earlier, I mentioned that there are challenges that are peculiar to different teams. For I mentioned a few challenges, and I also mentioned that there are some challenges that I did not mention, which means that some challenge is not for is peculiar to your team. Your team might be experiencing, other kind of challenge. However, one of the ways you can actually overcome a challenge within a remote team is a communication challenge, rather, is for you to first identify what the problem is. This is the problem. You've been able to identify that this is a challenge that I have. And I mentioned when I was, discussing earlier that one of the ways that you can actually, help, or one of the ways that you can help to resolve a challenge is for you being able to identify that this is a challenge. And when you know that this is a challenge, that's the beginning of your solution. You know, identify the challenge first of all. When you identify the challenge, then it takes you to the next step of you creating a solution for that challenge, and you
Mm,
see how you can overcome this challenge by you identifying this challenge. But for a startup teams, the challenges that are peculiar to startup teams, we mentioned them earlier, and we also talked about how we can overcome these challenges. And I mentioned that we have fast-paced, diverse roles, limited constraints. These are, I would, for a fact, I would say that these are challenges that are usually peculiar to a startup teams, and how we
mm,
can actually resolve them is to for us to also, um, start practicing, or for us to implement some of the things we discussed on how we can address these challenges. You can start our daily stand-ups, weekly practice session. All of these are things that would help us to be in sync as a team. When you're in sync as a team, it is difficult for you to have problem, or for you to have communication challenge. All right, because everybody understands that, okay, this is where you are when it comes to you giving the right updates at the right time. Because during your daily stand-up you give your updates, during your weekly stand-up you give your updates. When it comes to working in a remote setting, when you give your updates regularly, and you also state your next step, everybody understands that, okay, this is what you're doing next, your next line of action, this is what you're doing next. During your weekly practice sessions, you attend, you give updates, you share knowledge as required, and all of that. And you also leverage on the tools. Make sure you're communicating. You don't just go incommunicado. You don't just maybe when you're sick, make sure you're communicating that, oh, right now I am not feeling well, or this is the way I feel, so everybody knows that, oh, let's not disturb to your seat today, this is the way she feels, and all of that. Oh, she needs to get better. you know Communication, you talking, you making sure that you are giving your team updates as required. This would actually help your communication to be effective. People are not wondering, everyone is in sync on what is going on. So these are some of the ways that can help you to overcome challenges in a communication challenges in a remote team. So you making sure that you're carrying everybody along. Okay. I hope I've been
Correct.
able to answer your question too, Yossi.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. You really explained in detail. So the second and the last question from my end is, okay, what's the best way to resolve conflict among remote, work teams, people working in a remote environment? What's the best way?
Okay. One of the things I mentioned when I was talking about conflict resolution, I mentioned that when you're resolving conflicts, within a team, one thing you want to do is that you want to focus on the issue, because when you focus on the people and you are focusing on, oh, this is how this person feels about the situation, this is how this
Mm,
other person feels about the situation, as much as you're paying attention to their feelings, that's you being empathic. You want to have
mm,
empathy. However, you also want to make sure that you want to know what happened. You want to know what the problem is exactly. Not that, oh, this other person is crying, this person must be hurt than this other person. No, we express our feelings differently. So this person might not cry because this person might not be someone that cries, that just, something just happens and you start crying, or something just happens and you just flare up and everything. Some people know how to, keep things in their heart for a long
mm,
time, and all of that we express differently. So you want to be empathic, number one, and you also want to make sure that you are focusing on the issue at the time, not the people, while being
mm,
empathic, while being sensitive to their situation, while being sensitive to their feelings, as a person. You also want to focus on the issue. Forget that, Dasola is a bad person. Forget that this is how, Isaac behaves. What exactly is the problem? Dasola being a bad person might actually be right in that situation.
mm,
She might be on her right, and the other person might actually be wrong. But because if you're trying to focus on the fact that Dasola is has this attitude, she's rude and all of that, and you're like, oh, I already know Dasola, and you just face Dasola, that is wrong. You don't resolve conflict in such situation. In any situation, don't resolve conflict like that. What you should do is to know what the issue is and resolve the issue. You know, resolve the issue. I know that when people have, issue, they say one person should be the bigger person. Why not the both of them be the bigger person? Or why not be why can't everyone involved in the situation be the bigger person? Why do you want this person to be the smaller person? So it's better you resolve that issue, and everybody, you know is fine with that resolution. Sometimes everybody might not be fine with the resolution. However, it also depends on how you are able to handle the situation. So you want to handle it uh, with sensitivity, with empathy, and you focusing on the issue and not the person.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for that insightful section, even also answering and breaking it down. If there's something I've taken on today, it is the fact that I should focus on the problem and not the person, so that I am able to overcome whatever challenge, solve whatever conflict. And that's my own take home for today. And I hope that all of our attendees have one or two take homes from today's webinar. Thank you so much, Tosin. It's nice having you today. So quickly, let's move to our takeaway. So for everyone that attended this seminar, of course, you have an opportunity to book a free one-on-one consultation with our cloud expert. You also get, access to the free AWS digital training exclusively for attendees. So if you want to get started in tech, or you want to upskill, enroll in any of our CIL Academy programs. So today I will be taking time to explain more of what we have in CIL Academy. So of course, in CIL Academy, we have lots of programs. We have data engineering, cloud engineering. We also have, programs that are like your zero to techie. We also have the ILT, instructor-led trainings for enterprise. So if you're an organization, you've joined us today, we have the IoT programs for enterprise. We also have WizLab for exam prep. So this helps you to prepare for any certification, AWS certification exam, any certification exam you're preparing for. We also have AWS vouchers, to ease your payments for your certification exam. So you can just quickly move now to CIL.academy.com, and I will also drop a link in the chat box. So the link would take you through to book a call with our consultant. So just check the chat box right now and you will see the link right there. So I'm pasting it now so we can click on that. We can click on that link to book a call with our consultant. So okay, so I'm pasting it again, I think. Okay, yeah. So we can book a call with our consultant. They will help you answer questions, whatever questions you have as regards to our service offerings or CIL Academy. I mentioned from the beginning that if you want to catch the replay of this session, like I said earlier, you might want to share with a team member, you might want to share with someone in your organization, even your friend and family. Don't forget to connect with us, share your feedbacks with us on our social media platform at CIL_teams, that is on Instagram, and on LinkedIn, Secure Intelligence, on Twitter at CIL_teams, on Facebook at CIL Teams, on YouTube, just type CIL_teams. You will definitely get the replay of this webinar and previous webinars as well. Thank you so much. So once again, I've dropped the link in the chat box where you can book your appointment to speak with a consultant. Thank you so much for today's session. In the absence of no question, we call it a day from this. And thank you all.